Hello everyone, it is Briximus Prime back for another McFarlane Toys Warhammer action figure review, and today we're going to be reviewing the Warhammer Ork Meganob with shoota. Actually, this title here doesn't really make sense unless you say it inside of a orc accent. Ork Meganob with shoota. Yeah, that sounded a lot better. Taking a look at the rest of the packaging, right here it says Warhammer 40k. Here on the side it's got a big mugshot of the Meganob right there. Here on this side it says it's got 12 plus, even though it's called McFarlane Toys. Seems kind of stupid for your gits. Over here got some nice imagery of that Meganob back there. And I'm not gonna do this voice for the whole video. And then the only accessory included with this figure is a little stand here with a peg on it that has the Warhammer 40k logo on it. And honestly, this thing's kind of bland and it doesn't really do much to actually stand the figure up. According to my sources, this particular orc is not really based on any particular kind of like orc from the Warhammer 40k universe. If I'm wrong, let me know down in the comments if this is based on a particular character. So let me know down in the comments below. But as far as I know, an Ork Meganob is just a orc that is completely upgraded and covered in this big battle armor. Like, it's not really based on a particular kind of orc, it's more of a rank for an orc. Basically like a commanding general or like a commanding like chieftain of the orcs. And the only Ork Meganob that I'm aware of that comes to mind, at least from the video games, is obviously Grimskull from Space Marine, who's probably one of my favorite video game characters ever. I swear, if I had a nickel for every time I heard an orc say Space Marine, I would be able to buy another PS5. This big old jaw piece right here was its own separate piece out of the box. And this big old backpack piece right here was also its own separate piece out of the box. But I am telling you right now, these were some of the hardest things to actually get onto the figure. This jaw piece right here was actually warped out of the box. It was slightly bent inward. And trying to get it to actually clip into these little areas right here and right there while it was warped was really hard to do, especially since this is stiff, really hard plastic, and it really does hurt because how sharp and pointy everything is. And this was a bit of a chore to get in there, but not as much of a chore as it was to get this backpack piece in here. This thing was so hard to get in, my hand was numb after a little while, just how much pressure I had to put this thing in. But as you can see, now that it is in there, it is no longer going to be coming out. I can perfectly hold this figure by that backpack piece and it is not going to come out. Same thing goes for the jaw. I can hold this guy by the jaw piece and that is not going to be coming out anytime soon. So even though it did take a lot of time and a lot of effort to really get both of those parts in there, they definitely were worth it in the long run. The head sculpt here looks really good. I love how the Meganob head sculpt came out. I like how he's got that scar on his eye where he's kind of got the eye shut. The teeth look really good. And again, the paint and sculpt work that McFarlane Toys does with a lot of their figures looks absolutely phenomenal. And this figure is no exception to all that paint and sculpt work, especially with all of this free space you got for it, especially with all the dry brushing and all the nice paint work. Like I said before, it's always top tier for me. Alright, you gates. Getting into some of the extra details. He's got a shoota here on his arm. Even though this guy don't come with any accessories, he's definitely got accessories already built in on him. Like how it's got the knife right there with all the little bits and jips right there on the blade. The actual barrel looks pretty good on its own. All the dry brushing looks pretty good all over the barrel. I like all the cuts and scratches and extra detail. This little rubber hose right here is, like I said, rubber, so it's nice and pliable. And then again, there's all this nice mechanical detailing going all throughout the figure. There's that backpack again. And again, the green skin I actually think looks really good when it contrasts against all the dark gunmetal gray colors. It's a nice look for the figure. It really works in its favor over that other version of the green skin that they were kind of going over. Another cool detail I like is how they got those little bits of the checkered detail going across the claw right there. That's something that I feel like this figure is lacking a little bit in, but not too bad. Also, I like how up here on top of the figure, I like how on the top of the backpack you do have that Ork logo right there. It's painted up very nicely, and again, nice pliable material. On the chest, he also has another Ork logo right there. Again, very nice with the red paint, and all the mechanical and sculpt work is done very well on this guy, and I really appreciate a lot of the work that they really put into these figures, because I feel like you're not really, like, you really, because you have the lack of accessories, it makes it feel worth your money with what you're getting, which, did I emphasize how chunky and heavy this guy is? He is quite literally a brick of a figure. And sadly, that does kind of apply to his posability. Going over his posability, like speaking of, the head can pivot a little bit from side to side, and then it can't really look left or right. It was easier to do it without the jaw on to make him look left and right, but even then it wasn't that much. The shoulders can rotate a full 360, and then you can't really see it in there, but they are on these slight butterfly joints that are in there. They don't really do too much, but you can see them shifting around in there. Shoulders can move outward that far. They can move in. It looks like he's supposed to have a bicep swivel right here, but because of the way how the arm is designed, it doesn't really allow you to do it. He does get bends at the elbow, but they are pretty limited and under 90 because they wanted to have this little gimmick back here where when you bend the elbow, it has this little like piston pumping action, which is pretty good in theory, but I would have much rather not had this. Either that, or they should have extended this to be a little bit longer so we could actually bend it 90 degrees, but that's just my personal preference. This claw arm can swivel at the wrist, and then the claw itself can also open up like this, and I love all the weathering and damage that's all over the claw. I love the weathering and everything all over the figure, because it really gives it that sense of age and everything. All the same posability on this arm, only the gun, the little shoota here, doesn't really swivel at all. And then he does have a waist swivel right down there, and then he does have a bit of a diaphragm joint, which allows for a very slight ab crunch and a very slight arching back, and not that much from side to side, but did want to mention that it is technically there. It's just mostly there for the waist swiveling. And then over here, he does have these little pistons going across his hips, and surprisingly, they don't really limit the posability all that much. I do feel like it limits it a teeny bit, though. The legs can kick forward that far. They can't really kick back that far. They can move outward very far, even with the pistons on. He does have a pretty limited thigh swivel, but that's not hindered by this. That's just the actual thigh itself. He does have a pretty unhindered bend at the knee. And again, the dry brushing here looks really good. It's just, every time I mess around with this figure, I find a new detail to appreciate. The ankles can hinge up and down on very tight joints, and if you shift it, you can get an ankle pivot, and then he does also have some toe bend up and down, so that is very good articulation on this guy. I just wish maybe his elbows would bend in more, and maybe he should have had a little bit more posability in the head, or even this jaw piece should have been articulated, but then with this being a separate piece, I can see how that would have been hard. Here is Ork Meganob with the other two Warhammer figures that I have also reviewed in my previous Warhammer video. Be sure to check out that review if you guys missed out on that. Space Marines! And then here is Meganob compared to my last 6-inch figure I reviewed, the Symbiote Spider-Man figure, so you guys can kind of get a sense of just how big this guy actually is. Like, he really is a big, chunky figure. And that is basically it for my review on the Ork Meganob with shoota. This git here is quite the big figure, and I had a lot of fun posing him around. And I totally did not get addicted trying to do that voice impression while playing around with it. And McFarlane Toys, most of the time, always knocks it out of the park when it comes to the painting of their figures. They always have a talent when it comes to dry brushing and really getting those weathered effects and just everything on the figure, and this figure definitely shows a lot of that talent. But I do wish that they maybe incorporated just a little bit more posability into the figure, especially considering that this guy doesn't really come with a whole lot of accessories. If not have him come with a whole lot of accessories, then it would have been nice to have more of a posable figure. And it's definitely a whole lot of fun to pose this guy around with the other Warhammer 40k figures that I also have, especially a lot of the Space Marines. But yeah, that is basically it for my review on the Ork Meganob with shoota. So if I had to give this guy a rating, I do give him a very solid 8 out of 10. So anyway, that is basically it for this review. I thank you all for watching.
And if you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like on the video. Be sure to let me know if you gits want to see me do this orc impression more. And be sure to subscribe to Briximus Primes to check out more videos on those action figures.